Good morning, dear colleagues and friends. And you know, when I was walking today to the place of this conference, I was thinking how lucky I am. And we often think that we are lucky, even during these war times. Yeah, I'm lucky because I can be here with you these days in a wonderful city of Vienna, the biggest sponsor of our conference. And in Ukraine today is day 471 of the war, of the big war, of the invasion. Day 471 of the 3 days blitzkrieg of Putin. And he fails. And we're winning. And we, of course, we will win together. Yeah? And isn't that a miracle? I think it is. And then, you know, the day when I started to get prepared for this keynote speech, Kyiv was bombed heavily, and one of my friends, she asked if it had been a challenging night and day. And I answered yes and no, because I've got a bigger challenge to get myself prepared for this keynote speech. And you know why? That's because there were too many stories in my head, and you know, new stories were popping up, and they were competing with each other, and I could not choose the right one, and I didn't know which were the right stories for you. And then later I thought that there is one element which was missing then, and that element was I didn't have a dialogue with you, because I had a lot of stories to share, but I didn't know if those stories will somehow resonate with you, and so what would be your feedback on those stories. And then I decided that I will try, or could we please try to co-create this presentation, because of course I have a presentation, but I would really, really love it if I could approach some of you and ask you a question, or ask for a comment, and you will comment back. And in this way we would co-create this keynote speech, and there will be a dialogue rather than a monologue. Agreed? Thank you. You are the most supportive group of people. Yeah, that's for sure. So basically, the first, I do remember very well the 24th of February 2022, when Kyiv was bombed, and I woke up and my very first thought was, finally it started and we will win. Interestingly, that later on, when I spoke to other people, they shared the same, feelings and impressions, and the same insight were in the heads of many people. Little did we know how we would win, but we were absolutely sure that we will win. And this confidence is very difficult to explain. Yeah, because there is no logical explanation of this. But somehow we just know, somehow it is just this confidence is built in us. And this is a huge resource and a source of, of our resilience, of our dedication, and of our victorious pace. One thing was absolutely clear: this invasion started not in February 2022. It started much, much earlier. The war actually started in 2014, when Russia's annexed Crimea and occupied the eastern part of Ukraine. But in February, the war became everyday experience for many Ukrainians and many other people in the world. Because each of you have also your own experience of the war. I received many letters from many people from many countries, and some people reported, especially at the beginning of the war, that they were crying and they were praying and they were very disbalanced, etc. And that was amazing, that someone who is sitting somewhere in Australia is so much attached to something that was happening in Ukraine. This is amazing, and I was writing that. So we think that this is not the Third World War, but in fact this is a Third World War, because there are so many people impacted by the war. And during that day, I was just standing in front of my window and looking through the window, and I thought that just nothing from yesterday survived today. Yeah, I mean, that was life, like an illusion, and there is no life in the future. There is also an illusion, and the only the only thing that exists, this is a present moment, and I don't know what to do in this present moment. I'm very disoriented. And at that very moment, I saw my neighbor, an old man with a stick, walking slowly by my window with his dog, because that was their daily ritual. And I said, okay, wait. So if they still have their daily rituals, then probably I also can have my daily rituals, some of them, and I can create some other rituals. And that's what I did. So here you see me with my bike. This is the near Dnipro River. So every day I took my bike, I traveled to the park where I met with my friends. We were walking in the park, sharing emotions, sometimes, often, every day actually watching the missiles flying in all the directions, yeah. And then I came back home with my bike, and that was a kind of ritual that I repeated during many days. I don't know, maybe the first 3 months of the war, definitely it was a ritual. And now the question actually, what are your old and new rituals and how are they helpful was the question that I asked frequently since then. And people, of course, shared very different experiences, but they always found this exercise useful because they realized that there are some things that are under their control, because there were so many things that were not under our control. On this picture, so most of the photos I took myself. So on this picture you see something, and so actually what do you see, guys?
I don't know.
Who knows? So what is there on those pictures? Who knows? Yeah, just...
Monuments,
yeah?
Some monuments basically protected from missiles, etc.
Yeah. You see now these are the monuments of Kiev, and all of them are protected. Yeah, and that was a kind of metaphor. When I was looking at those monuments, I was asking myself, do I want to protect everything that I had been doing before professionally, or should I continue doing something? Yeah, or should I wait for the better times? Like those monuments, they're just waiting for better times to be open, to be seen again. And that was a very important question because I was almost sure that I would not be possible to get paid work for the near future. But yeah, of course I can volunteer, but so what can I do and how can I get included actually? That was a very big question for me then. And then of course I was absolutely sure that solution-focused thinking and communication would work very well also in the due time. So that was quite a rhetorical question. Does SF works in wartime? But of course it works in wartime. So the question is actually, do we need any adjustment to made? Yeah, like in this photo you see, so you understand, do you see? Yeah, so there is a generator because we had numerous blackouts, and then people started to adjust themselves, and all the small businesses and big businesses, they started to adjust their operations. And there is a huge number of generators in Ukraine at the moment. I think we have to rent them someday. But that was a question, how should I adjust? And so also on the level of the questions. Do the questions have to change? For instance, this question, what do you want instead? That was one of my favorite questions before the war. So I asked it very, very frequently. And, there were different answers to these questions. But when the war started, many answers to this question became very, very obvious. And then, so I was thinking, so what could be an alternative? Anton?
An alternative to what do you want instead?
Yeah, just you can comment so you can make it. What do you think about it? Or maybe it could still be used like it is.
I would ask the question, what is important for you now in a situation like that?
Like we discussed yesterday.
Yeah.
Any other alternatives or versions of this question during the wartime? No, come on, you are creative. Yeah, America.
Maybe what would be possible anyway?
Yeah, anyway. I like this word anyway. Yeah, what could be possible anyway? There was someone else who would like to. Yeah, Alexander, is it? Yeah.
What is in your control?
Yeah, what is under your control? Yeah, that's true. Actually, what I have discovered that people would like to speak more about what they feel rather than what they do. Because what they feel is much more important during the wartime. So, and gradually I moved to asking them this question, how do you want to feel instead? Because if you ask, for instance, I had some bad cases when I asked people what would you like to have instead, and of course people wanted their ruined houses or destroyed houses back, they wanted their family back, they wanted their deported children back, etc. So you cannot ask this question. But when you, I understand this is a very difficult situation, very challenging, this unfortunate situation, everything's so, it's destroyed, ruined, killed, and everything. And you feel very, very, very devastated. But any chances that you could feel better? So how would you like to feel differently at this period of time? Or, for instance, another question. Also, so when we look for resources, we ask people if they had any similar experience in the past. Yeah? And again, during the wartime, 90% of experiences, these are the experiences that you had never had before. What do you see on this picture?
There's a girl who has written something on her back, or is it wounds? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
I think it's a little girl whose mother or father has put her name and contact details in the back in case something happens.
Yeah, that's correct. Because when children were taken away from and are still taken away from their relatives, or they can be bombed, and some parents were killed, etc. So they wanted that those people who will find their children, they know the name of the child and when the child was born, and so there is a name of this girl and the date when she was born, and also telephone numbers of the mom and the dad of the relatives, so that at least she could be identified somehow. Yeah. Of course, so this question, how did you do that before? That is a very good question in a peaceful time, but sometimes it's not a very good question in this time. Then, so what could be a better alternative? And we were thinking about these better alternatives, and then I thought that probably the experience they were creating at this very moment are also very valuable and important. So they didn't have this experience before, but they're creating a new experience. And this experience could be of help for themselves and for other people. Yeah? So I just moved this question, what helpful experiences also for the future are you creating now? And then you have a lot of things to discuss. Yeah, and on this photo you see, by the way, the energy hub, so-called energy hub, because when the blackouts became very frequent, and then the longest blackout I experienced, that was 38 hours without water, electricity, what else? Nothing. Heating, no electricity, no water. And then people started to create the energy hubs. First, the businesses addressed this issue, and they just opened their outlets for anyone who would like to charge their telephone, for example, mobiles. And then very quickly, the local powers, they have organized, and also, again, businesses and local powers, they have organized so-called energy hubs. And there was a children's corner there, because if you come with a child, you can just leave your child in this corner, and you can work. So this is one of the energy hubs which was close to my place. And also, all of us, we use the scale from 0 to 10, yeah, to locate a person somewhere on their way to the progress. So we have been using this very frequently. And my story about this scale was, I spoke with a lady. She spent, together with her family, she spent almost 2 months in the cellar. because they were bombed, and also because then Russians arrive. Of course, they were, creating all the atrocities. They were raping, killing, and everything. So sometimes they were staying in the cellar for several days without food. Then finally they escaped, and they were in a safe place when I was talking to her. And she was desperately looking for a job, because most of Ukrainians, as you know, when they go to other countries, they are trying to be self-sufficient, they're trying to find a job, and she was trying to find a job. And she was not very confident, so that's why we were discussing things. And at a certain moment, I asked, okay, on the scale from 0 to 10, how confident you are that you will find your job soon? And there was a silence, and then she said, could we change the scale? I said, yeah, of course, yeah, and why? Yeah. And she said there were 10 steps in the cellar. And that was very painful, yeah. And since then, I always ask people about their preferred scale. So it's not from 0 to 10. It could be anything they prefer to have. What do you think about this, William? About the story adjustment.
Yes, I feel that that you are opening some doors and windows in my heart that had not been opened. And the stories of rethinking my questions is so relevant, and this makes it real.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and it's really, sometimes we just take some questions for granted because we have been using them for ages, yeah, and they are useful, of course, and they have proven to be good ones. But there are moments that we have to rethink. And for example, yesterday when we were talking, there was a session with Annie and Monica, and we were also trying to rethink the questions we usually ask, yeah? And I think this is a very useful exercise, but sometimes just forced, and sometimes it is not, yeah? By the way, there are a number of questions which were very strange to answer, or we were not very comfortable to answer them during the wartime. And one question is, how are you? Because we didn't know what to answer, we still don't know how to answer this question, because if you say, I'm fine, everyone understands that you're not fine. And even we've got a lot of different resources of psychological help, of assistance. And one of the resources is called You, How Are You? Yeah? And if you are a person who needs help, you can go there and you can check what is possible for you. I mean, so what are the exercises, what we can do. Or if you would like to help someone, or if you are the boss or you are the leader of the company, you can also check this resource. So, but this was one of the most difficult questions. Then we were trying to figure out what the best answer could be, and then one of the answers was, we are as good as we can be during the wartime. But of course that was not the answer to the question. Another question which we really didn't like, yeah, that was the question, are you safe? Actually, nobody is safe in the world, but everyone is safe. Yeah, so and you cannot be safe in the war. Whenever you are, because any moment you can die. So you cannot be safe. And then when we discussed this question about the safety, then again we came back to these feelings and emotions, because again, different people in different situations feel differently. Some of ours are more psychologically stable, and we feel safer, or we create the safety around us, while some other people are not. Yeah, and that's again when we discussed. Okay, I feel very uncertain. I feel very unsafe. Okay, so but what makes your safety? How could you make yourself more safe? Is it possible for you? Who can help you? So these are the questions again we discussed. I like Bruno Catalano, and Bruno Catalano is famous for his travelers sculptures. And this photo I took because this is my 5th travel during the wartime. And I will tell you about the first one, but this is the 5th one. But that picture was taken in France, in a little town, Mandelieu-le-Napoule. And you see here the 2 sculptures. And guess what I was thinking when I was looking at them? I was sitting in the park, looking at those 2 sculptures, travelers, and I was thinking about something. Guess what it was about? It was about traveling. Any guesses? Any ideas? Okay, what do you think when you look at those sculptures? Yeah.
My question. Okay. So what came to my mind is like, how do you manage to stay up?
Aha. So that's what you think when you look.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because you cannot understand even how everything is. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
I think you always leave something behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes.
You lost something, but you're still going home.
We've got many interesting ideas. Yeah, when I was sitting there and looking at those, and there were millions of Ukrainians already abroad. And, and I was communicating with many because I have been supporting the Ukrainian communities in other countries and cities, and also those people who hosted Ukrainians, and also those people who have been working with Ukrainians, like local powers. And then I was always thinking that, even if we leave, we transport our body, but not necessarily our soul. And we still feel connected. And even children. I remember I was talking to, there was one company, and they take their women employees with their children to Poland. They were staying in Krakow. And then I was talking also to children. And they told me that they also visited Wrocław during their weekend together with the school. And I said, okay, that's great. Now you know 2 cities in Poland already. One is Krakow, another is Wrocław. Which city did you like most? And 2 of them burst into tears and said, we like Kiev. We want home. And that was one of the most painful moments when I was talking to them, because they wanted home, because their souls, they were there in Kiev. So my first trip happened to be in March last year, which was just 1 month after the beginning of the Russia's invasion, and I went to Prague to the board meeting of the biggest organization of interculturalists I belong to. And I was not planning to go first, but then one of my colleagues, she said, "Oh, Victoria, we will be missing you so much." And I thought that she was not very sincere. I said, "No, you will not be missing me, I'm coming." So I decided to travel, and it took me 36 or 38 hours to get from Kiev to Prague. Normally it takes 2 hours by plane. And there were a lot of different cases on the way, especially when I arrived to Przemysl, and this is the closest, the city which is on the border between Ukraine and Poland. I arrived and there was a long queue because you still need a ticket. The ticket could be free of charge, but you have to get a ticket to get into the train to Prague. And I was standing in this long queue. When I came to the box, she said, "Are you Ukrainian?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Give me your passport." I gave the passport, and she gave me the passport together with a free ticket. And I said, "I'm very sorry, but this is a kind of business trip, and I would like to pay. Can I pay, please?" And she said, "But you are Ukrainian." I said, "Yes, but I would like to pay." And she said, "No, you are Ukrainian. You've got your ticket." Yeah, and this is also about stereotyping, how we stereotype, how we don't want to give up our stereotypes sometimes. But when I was traveling to Przemysl first and to Prague, there were a lot of people traveling together with me, and then there were with small children and with cats and dogs, and there were people with the luggage and there were people without the luggage. And all of them shared very different stories, of course, but that was also the stories that they don't want to repeat in their life any longer. And they thought that they are living for, for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month, but then this delayed, their return delayed. And there were a lot of problems. Then later on, when I was working with them, I'm not a psychotherapist, but then you still notice there are a lot of problems that people bring together with them to other countries, and these are just some of them. Anyone willing to comment on those problems? Just, yes, Mark.
Thank you, Victoria. Looking at this slide, I recognize all of this. And as some of you know, I've written about hospitality and host leadership a lot. And one of the things I've learned is that good guests also find ways to be good hosts. So this thing, you are where you are supposed to be, yes. Out of everything you were doing before, what can you continue? Yes. And what else is possible? And one way to help with the self-guilt and the delayed life and the I'm not a refugee thing, it might be to think, as we are being hosted, perhaps, in a situation we didn't want to be in, how can we, reciprocate is the wrong word, but how can we join in different ways? So you can be a guest, but that doesn't mean you have to be reliant. You can be a guest, but that doesn't mean you have to simply take what you're given. You can be active as well, and be acting as a good host is a wonderful way of being a good guest. So I think there's a reciprocal nature of this relationship. It's underexplored, so that's what's coming up for me when I see this very powerful slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And indeed, so we can just on this slide we can stop for hours and discuss a lot of different problems that we have been facing. And really, one of the problems, again, the perception and the stereotypes. For example, people in Europe they had previous experience with refugees from different countries. And they were trying just to transform that experience to Ukrainians as well. Ukrainians were not ready for that because they don't want to be called refugees. Many of Ukrainians are people temporarily hosted in the country, and they just hated this title. Yeah, some of them, they said that, look, we are here, and it's not that we have to be taught, but we are ready to exchange, but we are not allowed to exchange because people treat us very nicely, but as if we are victims. And you know that Ukrainians do not consider ourselves the victims. Yeah? We consider ourselves to be winners. Yeah? And so if you treat us as victims, we are not prepared to this. And we have discussed it many times with my colleagues from different countries, and we have a lot of lessons still to learn. We have learned some lessons already, but we have a lot of lessons to learn. But here, about all these sufferings, many people, they would say, I don't know why I'm here in this country. I want to be back, and I have this sense that I have betrayed my family or my husband. I want to be back, but I can't be back because every time when I hear the alarm ringing, I'm very nervous. And so basically, when we discuss these situations, I think that we were speaking about you are where you're supposed to be now and what you can learn there. If you are there, it's for purpose. Why? Yeah. And of course, one of the questions we often ask also, out of everything you were doing before the war, what can you continue doing? While I was talking to different people from different countries, I had this impression that I was reframing myself, because I had to. It was demanded. And there are several things that I have discovered about myself and about what I have been doing before. And one of the first things was that I have discovered that I am too vulnerable. Yeah. I started actually from the beginning of the war. I'm not a very social media person. but from the beginning of the war I started to post frequently, and later on I even summarized everything in this book. This is an electronic book, so if you would like to read it one day, so you can just go there. And these are the war thoughts, because these were my thoughts. They were not necessarily comments on what was happening, but on the other hand, what appeared into my mind when I was moving through the first 300 days of the war. One thing is absolutely clear. So some of my intercultural colleagues, they were trying to organize a round table, and said, no, this is not the right time. You have to wait a little bit. So, and I've got just several minutes left, so I will try to speed up here. Another discovery that I made was that if people think that you are something different, just accept it. If people think that you are a psychotherapist, fine, do not argue. Just, accept and act accordingly. Do whatever you want, but yeah, we just try to do that. If people think that you know better, so you know better. At this moment, they tell you, so what you have to do. Finally, we have discussed that a lot, but being present is also a dialogue. And we know that. It's not necessarily that you need words to exchange, because you exchange energies. And this photo, by the way, I took also in France, in Lille some time ago. And that little notebook I found in one of the churches. And I like the idea, because in the church they put this book, which is called the Book of Intentions and Answered Prayers. So anyone could just sit down and write either a prayer or an intention, or just to thank the God. And I opened the book, and 90% of all the posts were about thank you, God. And that was during the wartime. People always find something they would like to thank others about. Also, as you know, before, that was mentioned already, before the war, I self-appointed myself to be a project manager of the Solution-Focused Ukraine. And that was an ambitious project that goes beyond my lifespan, of course. But what is important that you have to just invest certain energy, and this energy then pushes everything. And and I truly believe in the power of a single question. So that's how I come to this concept of the SF Light. I ask myself, do people really need to understand SFA to apply it? And my answer was no. And as we know, sometimes we just need one question to shift the perspective. And that was very important for me to understand, to move this project forward all the time. So, finally, what I have learned, that no small step is small, really. And here you see the calendars. So I produced calendars this year and the previous year. But this year I was hesitating if I had to produce the calendars, because sometimes that was not the mood to write something. But then finally I decided to go for it. And here you see my calendar on the 0 line, in the front line. I was so happy to receive this photo, because it means that even if you make a step, you make the step, it will be helpful, and sometimes you even don't know the impact of it. Just make it, Yes, now I will be very quick, really, because we do not have much time. But this is the question I wanted to ask. If there are really naturally solution-focused people, and we know that, yes, there are people who call themselves to be solution-focused. In every workshop, for instance, you'll find people who would say at the end of the workshop, but of course I have been using this for ages, So I didn't know that it is called the solution-focused approach, but actually I have been using that. So then I ask myself if there are solution-focused countries, and I think that Ukraine is very much solution-focused. And this is just to prove this. First of all, we have created our future perfect. And we have started to speak about the future in the first month of the war. The invasion started, and we already started to speak about the reconstruction, about and we started to build the projects. So we were always in the future. We know what we want and what we wanted, how to move there. We built on our strengths, and one of our strengths, as I have said, this is the personal responsibility of what is happening in the country. And during the war, civil society is absolutely amazing. I'm a part of different groups, and then, any problem posted, 5 minutes later, problem is solved. Whether it is a big problem or the problem of I have forgotten my cat in the in the flat and I need someone to pick him up. So people are very well self-organized, and I just stress it, self-organized. It's not, we do not need anyone else to come and to say what we have to do. We self-organize ourselves, and there are a lot of initiatives on every level. Ukraine is a very spiritual country, and spiritual doesn't mean religious. It means that, so we are spiritually connected, yeah? And that's why it is very helpful, because when I was saying that at the beginning of the war, everyone knows that we are winning and we will win. So that's because there is no legal logical explanation, but there's I just know that how I'm connected somehow. Self-organization, self-coordination, inventiveness as resourcefulness, persistence as resilience. This is something that we have been doing for a long period of time. Yeah, I would like just to say that many people say, "Oh, you've got a wonderful leader," but there is a concept of everyone on their places in Ukraine. Yes, we've got a good leader. Finally, we have been experimenting a lot with the leaders, so this one is better than others. Yes, but we do not over-exaggerate the role of the president. Many people in other countries say, "Oh, he is a god." What we say that yes, he is a good president, he serves well, but that's because he has got great people. Yeah, so his role is an important role, but even the role of that little one who is selling dumplings to earn some money for the army is equally important. Finally, every small steps matter. So Ukrainians do not ask the questions basically, "Oh, maybe we should think about something bigger and we shall waste time now." In this picture, you see this is in Turkey. This is the yacht of one of the Russian oligarchs, and this small boat. There were 11 Ukrainian young yachtsmen, at the time in Turkey, and they decided to protest. So they went against this big yacht just to protest. Some of you would say, "Oh, but this is useless," but we don't think so. We just think that every effort matters. We know the answers to the questions, how would you know that we are moving to the right direction, and we find helpful exceptions. Finally, Hyson, you would love this slide, because of course we have been also using your dialogic orientation quadrant. This is the head of the intelligence service, and he says, "You see, enough about your horrific past, let's talk about your horrific future." In Ukraine, we have not suspended or postponed life, and that is very important, because some people would put the life on hold, and they would say, "Oh, this is not the good time to start something or to continue something." We don't think so. We continue, we do, and we move forward, and I think that's very, very important, really, and we are resourceful and resilient. And of course, we practice positive gossiping. Every day when you listen to our media, so you would not hear, "Oh, life is so difficult. Oh my God, what we're going to do." You would hear, "Yes, this is our challenge. We can win because we are spiritually strong, we are united, we are together, the world supports us, and the justice is with us." So that's because we definitely win. So every step brings us closer to the victory. As I said, this invasion is not the war for territories. This is the war of values. And guess which values should win. Finally, often, or maybe even, yes, very often, I have a problem with the miracle question in Ukraine. To explain you that, so several years ago, I was talking to one teenager, and we came to the stage when I asked a miracle question, and he said, "Sorry, can I clarify? Did you ask me what I have to do so that the miracle would happen?" And, this is not that we do not believe in miracles. But in Ukraine, I think we just believe that for a miracle to happen, you need to do something. you have created first. Thank you.